so many of you out there right now who have been grappling with a whole host of microaggressions, macroaggressions, and whatever it is sort of aggression that sits in between micro and macro. And many of you have been pushed out of positions that you were pushed out of wrongfully. A lot of you have been dealing with a job and workspaces where, quite frankly, you're being taken advantage of. And you and I know good and well it's because of the racism. But for so many of us, it's difficult to figure out how we move forward, how we fight back. Joining me right now is somebody who does not only know how to fight back against those sorts of things, but she's a fighter by nature. Robin Europe is a certified professional trainer and former competitive bodybuilder who is currently pursuing a doctorate degree in physical therapy after a forced exit from her prior career, corporate fitness management. She has since redirected her energy and experience towards becoming a trusted healthcare provider in service to communities that need the care the most, but are often the least attended to. Robin, it's a pleasure to have you here. Welcome to the Lurie Daniel Favors Show.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited.
I am too. When we had first asked you to come on, the magnitude of what so many of us have been experiencing in the workplace, I was aware of it, but it's just been becoming so much more concrete. And for those who are new to your story, if you could briefly describe for us what you were experiencing in your workplace and what it was that was your final straw. What is it? The straw that broke the camel's back? What was the one thing that made you say, you know what? I'm going to fight back and I'm going to fight back hard?
Yeah, I was working for Equinox for about a year, and I was pretty excited about the position when I first got it. I got promoted within 3 weeks. I gave them 10 to 12-hour days every day, and very quickly it became apparent that I was going to have to deal with not just microaggressions, but macroaggressions every single day. So that went on for about a year, and ultimately they claimed that I was late and fired me for lateness. Um, a thing that we confirmed during discovery, but I knew what while I was employed there is that no other managers had been written up for time and attendance. It was not an hourly position. We did not clock in, we did not clock out. The only difference between me and the other employees is that I regularly went to HR when there were racial aggressions at our club, when there were aggressions against people for gender or sexuality. So it was actually a pretty cut and dry situation. There was really
What
no
were some of
question
the
about what's happening.
If you don't mind sharing, what was some of the
Yeah.
more extreme experiences that you had to navigate? Because just being promoted after 3 weeks, clearly you were doing something right. What were
Yeah.
some of the more extreme instances that you had to navigate?
Well, I'll give you a big bundle of a version. So there was a day, and I believe it was June of 2019. I remember everything really vividly.
Mm.
And a member came in and bought training and requested to be paired with a trainer. And as the department leader, it was my job to find out what his needs were and pair him with someone on our staff. So I asked the membership advisor who had signed him up, what is he looking for? And she said, he's looking for a white male. That's Michael, right?
Hmm.
And I said, is he describing someone specific or is that his request? And she said, no, he just wants to work with any white male. And she held the phone away from her mouth and she said, just any white male, right? And he said, yes, I just want to work with a white male. And she came back on and said, so yes, just any white male. That's Michael, correct? Which was horrifying. I was like, unfortunately, it's actually illegal for me to grant that request. I can't tell my staff that they did or did not get business on the basis of their race and gender. But
Wow.
more than that, I'm not granting a racist request because it's morally reprehensible. So I get
How
off the
about that?
phone. Yeah, I call the general manager. I speak to HR the next day. I tell them all the details. They say they're going to investigate it. I find out that less than 24 hours later, my general manager went around me to my white subordinate and told him to pair this member anyway. So the member got not one, but two white male trainers to work with. And in the following days, when I was reasonably upset about that, a VP and this white subordinate began text messaging jokes about me, stating that I was not a very charming negress, referring to an episode
Oh,
of Star Trek where Captain Uhura is first told that she's a very charming negress and then told, my apologies, my dear, that's just how we referred to property in my times.
oh, snap.
So it wasn't
Wow.
microaggressions.
That's not micro. That's
Yeah.
that's definitely not micro. I'm reminded of all of the healthcare workers who my heart goes out to when they have to deal with patients who basically subject them to similar treatment. And in the
Yep.
healthcare community, they because they have to, first do no harm. For a lot of the healthcare community, that means the healthcare provider can be harmed, and you can by providing the racist patient what they want in terms of the type of service they desire from the type of person they want it, centering their needs for racism is a part of their care package. This
Yep.
is insane. So this was just one of many examples that you experienced. And so I'm wondering, at what point did it become too much? Because there are a lot of people listening right now who are like, yep, I remember when something like that happened exactly to me. At what
Yeah.
point did you decide this is untenable? Because it sounds like you were making effective use of HR, which a lot of people worry about, because we often are told HR is there to protect the company. How did you manage the interactions with HR to the point that you ended up having to finally file a lawsuit?
Well, to be clear, HR is there for the company. No one should get that twisted. I just keep receipts for everything. So it was not a problem for me to go to them and say, hey, I have actually an email trail that shows this. Hey, I have, written documentation that shows this. So I guess my first piece of advice to anyone who is experiencing this, has experienced this, may experience it in the future is to just keep receipts, keep everything in writing. But more than that, to be honest, I did not it feels a little embarrassing to say, but I did not hit a wall where I felt like it was too much. I think,
Mm,
like a lot of working people in America, I needed my job. I needed my health insurance. There was no point where I felt like I could quit because I was upset. And that manifested in other ways. I had a really bad eating disorder relapse. I ended up in intensive treatment, where I was in therapy for 3 to 4 hours every single day, trying to kick this eating disorder. It really destroyed my body. It destroyed my mind. It destroyed my life. And even then, my thought was, if I quit this job, I will lose my health insurance and I won't be able to pay for treatment.
mm,
The straw was that I got fired, and I knew I had given them my all. I knew I had hit my numbers. I knew that there had been no complaints about my performance. There had only been praise about my performance. There was just them claiming that I was late only when I started reporting things to HR. So
mm.
I hired a lawyer immediately, and she said, if everything you're saying is true, this is a very clear case. This is not anything that we're going to have to get into the weeds about. And she was right. Over the course of the 4 years that it took, there were no moments
Four
where
years.
it took 4 years. We filed it the end of 2019 and it wrapped in the summer of 2023.
And y'all,
And
when
that
she
was
say
considered
it wrapped,
fast.
whew, well, honey, when you say it wrapped, baby, did it wrap? There was a jury decision in this case. How long did the jury deliberate overall? Do you recall?
I do recall the jury was given time for lunch and they came back shortly after their lunch break with a verdict. So we split it so that they would deliberate on liability first, whether Equinox had actually done the things we were saying they were doing. And then they also had to deliberate on damages separately. And both times it was slightly over an hour. It was quick. It wasn't, I don't think anyone was confused about what was happening. And the way that Equinox ran their case was amusing to say the least. It was really remarkable watching these people try to cover up their own mistakes.
Wow. Wow. Well, the jury certainly had no issues with realizing what was happening. According to the New York Times, a predominantly white jury of 5 women and 3 men agreed with you and the case that you provided, delivering a verdict in little over an hour, says the report. The next day, they awarded her $11.25 million in damages. Oh my God. Lord of mercy. That is significant. And it really speaks to a number of things that you did to fight for yourself. You said you had receipts. You were keeping track of what was happening. Give us a sense as to how was you keeping the receipts? Because I need to know in case I have to ever work for somebody other than the man. Let a sister know what kind of receipts were you keeping? Like, how were you getting access to these materials? What was the sort of methodology you employed to track what was happening?
The reality is that it's all of the instinctual things that we know. If things are in writing, they cannot be denied. And during the time that I was writing there, working there, I remember there were times when we would have interactions about something racist that someone said, something sexist that someone said, a time when staff may have been objectified based on gender or appearance. I mean, there were all these things that came up, and my feeling was this needs to be in writing, not just to protect me, but to protect my staff. I need to be able to hold HR accountable. I need to be able to say, I reached out to you on this date about this specific incident. A week later, I should have a follow up that you've at least done something, even if you can't tell me how you reprimanded a staff member or how you addressed it at the corporate level. So I
Mm.
put everything in writing. And there were times when I would be taken aside by one of my supervisors and they would say, do you mind not emailing about things all the time? Because, it's just so much better to talk to people in person. Your tone carries a lot better in person. And it's like, if you think that there's a tone problem when I list facts and ask for a follow up, that sounds like a you problem, not a me problem. So I absolutely refused to stop putting things in writing because it was the only way to keep people accountable. It was the only way to be certain that needs I had expressed for myself and my staff were being taken care of. If we spoke about something important, I would email after the meeting and say, I just wanted to recap to make sure that I understand what is expected of me. Um, and I would just write down, what happened in the meeting. Thank you so much for meeting with me. There needs to be a written receipt at all times of everything. We know that though.
Yeah, no, we do, and I'm a prolific emailer. One, because oftentimes, as much as people can't, they find it difficult to be able to keep track in meetings. I always pay attention to meetings. I take prolific notes.
Same.
I do a lot of note taking because as an attorney, I'm like, this is, I need to make sure that I'm on the same page. I will often do the same thing after a meeting. Hi, just thank you so much for the meeting. I want to make sure that we're on the same page. As I understand it, here's what I am responsible for. As we understand it, here's what you need from me. You are going to do ABC. I'm going to do one, two, three, yada, yada, yada. But it is really important. And I reply all on a lot of
Same.
things. If there are 10 people who are connected to a provision of services and only 3 of y'all are being responsive, I include everybody who's supposed to be there, especially if you're working at an organization. And I have in the past worked at organizations where everybody is in charge of the potato, but don't nobody want to touch the potato. And so they just throw hot potato. They just throw it all over the place and you do it. No, you do it. No, you do it. And so I'm really good at, like, you know what? I liked mashed potatoes. Mashed potatoes are some of my favorite potatoes. So we all gonna be in this email thread together. And you can act like you ignored it if you want to, but the date stamp, the time stamp, all of that matters, and all of it then becomes a part of a body of information that you then are able to use to protect yourself. So I think that the methodology you use was so important, but for so many of us, we don't want to have to go there, right? We don't want to think that the thing that is happening is what we think is happening. And we sometimes will give people the benefit of the doubt, Robin, who don't deserve the benefit of any doubt whatsoever. Give us a little sense as to the sort of what's the word I'm looking for? I feel like you got to have a certain sort of backbone. There's got to be a certain type of self-protective nature that kicks in. And for a lot of us who are grateful to be in these spaces, because we still have a number of us who are just grateful to have a job. We're excited to be in these spaces. We're glad they took a chance on us. We are often willing to overlook things that at the end of the day we go home and cry about. They have a deleterious impact on our health. You mentioned some of the things that you were navigating, and I know you're a fighter by nature. I mean, the profession you're in is one that requires you to have an understanding of your body, your mind, the mental health alignment that's necessary there. Give the people who are listening right now who are going through similar situations, what advice do you have for them about how they can not only document what they are talking about, as you just shared, but how they can really tap into a sense of how dare you? And who do you think you are? Some of us don't have enough who do you think we are that we carry into the workplace because we think that's going to make us too, well, I'll say it, too black and unacceptable.
Unfortunately, our employers often think that as well.
Yeah.
You know, I it wasn't a it wasn't a self-preservation instinct. It was being how old was I at the time? In my late 30s. It was being on the planet for almost 4 decades with a mother and grandmother and aunts who raised me to know better than that and raised me to do better than that.
Mm.
At the end of the day, the reason I filed the lawsuit was not because I was concerned about me, it was not because I thought I needed to protect myself. It was because I knew I left a staff of people of color still working there who now didn't have someone at the helm to stand up for them and to say what was going on and to make sure that they wouldn't continue to be harassed and attacked. I think
Mm,
if it had just been me, if it was, some executive position where I only have to fend for myself, I might not have said anything. And that's another thing I can't say I'm proud of. I don't really have the self-protective instinct. I have the community instinct. For me, if it doesn't benefit the community, it's not worth my time. So, that's really where it came in for me. I wish I could tell people that that's how they should feel.
yeah.
If you go to work every day and you get a paycheck, you deserve respect, you deserve dignity. You don't have to go to battle for the community or your family or your staff or your coworkers. That's just what I did. But you deserve dignity because you're a person on the planet. So,
Right. That's right.
yeah, I hope people are able to dig deep and find a place where they fit. And for me, the place where I fit is in defense of the people around me. That's all I care about. I don't care about much more than.
I love this. Well, $11.25 million looks really good on you. You look amazing, and I'm wondering how are you navigating the world now? What has it been like to sort of have to have navigated that experience and now come out so victorious on the other side? How are you today?
Well, now I am about halfway through the physical therapy doctorate, so I'm really enjoying education. I wanted to go back to school in the first place, and I remember when we were very early on in this case, when we had just filed and we were discussing, what it looks like to settle because no one, not defendants, not plaintiffs, no one wants to go to court. Juries are fickle. We were discussing what I would settle for, and I was like, well, I want to do this doctorate program. I would settle for my tuition. And so, as soon as I had a
Now,
teeny
baby, you can
tiny
open a
dollar in
whole
my pocket,
school.
yeah, I went back to school. I'm really enjoying the process. I'm looking forward to my future career. We actually start our clinical rotations in January, so I'll be working with patients, and I'm really excited about it. One of the things that people don't realize, especially in New York City, I don't know about anywhere else, but in New York City, the majority of home care attendants are young, Black, Caribbean immigrants, women who
Yep,
don't have college degrees, and many don't have high school degrees. And because of that, they bear the brunt of mistreatment and being underestimated, even though they're actually performing a life-saving service.
that's right.
So there's a part of me that wants to do everything I can so that people recognize that Black women we're not just the help. Sometimes we're the most brilliant person you're going to meet all day, and we're going to save your lives. Sometimes that's
In
who
your
we
whole
are.
life, you might not find
Yeah.
somebody more brilliant than a black woman. I'm just saying.
Listen, I agree. My mama and grandma and aunts, they would agree. But I think also we see so much of adverse health effects for Black women specifically. We see Black women dying in childbirth. We see Black men dying of prostate cancer at a significantly higher rate than any other race, and not because we get it more than other people. And part of caring for our own community, for me, is sometimes you need to see your own face in the doctor's office. Sometimes when you're experiencing pain, you may not trust that your white, highly educated, very experienced doctor believes you. But
Right.
if you have a nurse or a physical therapist or a physician come in who looks like you and you say, listen, I'm really feeling pain. This is nothing I've ever felt before. You may have a little bit more trust that they will listen to you. And it's not even necessarily that we will do a better job. It's that if the patient trusts you more, they will tell you more. And if they tell you more, they will have better outcomes. So that's how I'm navigating the world right now. I'm doing my best to learn what I need to learn to provide the best healthcare possible to really the Black community, even more broadly, working class people in New York City who otherwise don't necessarily get great healthcare because they can't afford it.
Right. I'm so glad that we're having this conversation today. I have a podcast that accompanies this show, and the topic today is about the healthcare community and how the racism of this country is what has led to the healthcare insurance crisis that we have right now. And everything that you're saying is so on point and so in line with everything that I'm talking about, both in that y'all, so the segment y'all heard at the very beginning of the show was similar to what I'm going to be talking about in the podcast, but I go far much more into detail. And Robin, you are so correct. The disparities that we are exposed to and the harms that we have to navigate, one, are just wholly unnecessary, but two, it's also part and parcel of a legacy of discrimination in the society. And it is, unfortunately, for everybody in the society, it's also at the heart as to why it is that we don't have a functioning healthcare system right now. And I started out, I don't know if you've ever watched The Color Purple, but when
I
Homer
have.
does that thing to Mister, and he said, like, I started out with that, like, everything you done to us, already done to you. The karma of racism is unmatched. And while I know a lot of people think they get away, you never get away from karma. She can
You
outwork
definitely
you, she
don't.
will outrun you, and she will meet you at the start of your very next step in any destination. For people who want to connect with you, I don't know if you are on social media, if you have a website. If so, what would be the best way for them to continue to follow your story?
I do have a website. It is robineuropept.info, and it's a combination of a way to reach me, maybe set up appointments if you have questions, but also it's a bit of a blog where I just talk about things like healthcare and education and work in general. So that's my favorite way to reach me.
That works, Robin. Europt.info. It has been a real pleasure having you here. I love to see us be victorious